I hate hustling and grinding, especially when it's on the wrong thing. But there is a thing to hustle and grind for. It just might not be what you think. And I break that down in today's show. Plus, one of the biggest breakthroughs I've ever seen by realizing that rest isn't just one thing. There's 7 types of rest that you can use to reset, create clarity, and attack your vision with vigor. So without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show, where we're joined by a very special guest. It's just me and my bobblehead. If you're not watching this on video, you need to watch this on video, but I got the best speaker gift ever, and I have a bobblehead that even has my tattoos drawn on it and my famous pink boots that I keynote in, and that's not what today's podcast is about. But let me just be really blunt. I'm against hustling, grinding. I'm against sacrificing, burning the wick at both ends, absolutely destroying ourselves with absolutely no end in sight. And I am for working in seasons or sprints when they're demanded. There's always going to be ups and downs in business, but I have just been surrounded lately with people that are just grinding their souls away, and it brings me to tears to even talk about, and myself included, guilty as charged, because all of us need pattern interrupts. All of us need support systems. All of us need people who love us and care for us that can help fill our buckets, but also all of us need to make sure that when we're running down a road, we're running down the right road, and we're not just blindly driving because we have sunk cost bias or endowment and we're stuck doing it that way. And so I'm against the hustle and grind that everybody speaks about, working like a slave. But I am for hustling and grinding on alignment, just not busy work. And really, our success, and one of the things that I write on my sticky notes and in my journal for my own reminder all the time, is my value is based on the intentionality and integrity of my inputs, meaning I have 100% control over where and how I spend my time. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made for years, and why I was 100 pounds heavier and now I'm in the best shape of my life and the happiest I've ever been, is because I understand the power of rest and space. And today I'm going to share with you the 7 different types of rest, because there actually are 7 different types of rest, and the power of space. And sometimes that space is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be, because that's where the clarity comes that we already know is there, that we've been avoiding it looking at, right? We get inundated with the noise. We get inundated with social. We get inundated with everything, our calendars, our computers, our phones. And I was just gifted the most incredible experience being in Austin, Texas. And the first thing they did when we checked in for this men's event is they took our phones away, and they took it away for 4 days. And it was the most heavenly 4 days. And the most beautiful part was the moment they took it, I fully surrendered. I didn't have any bad habits of checking it. I didn't want to know where it was. Not once was I like, where's my phone? Now, there were a couple moments where I was like, I miss sending videos to my kids, because I send videos to my kids whenever I travel, Branson, and I'll text Cheyenne. And those moments arose. But when my phone came back, it was actually very challenging to even look at it. Like, I didn't want to look at it, which told me how close I was to burnout, how close I was to being completely exhausted and hustling and grinding. And I think it's very, very important that we always understand that our job is to be a triage nurse in our own life, not to be on the field, not to be in treatment, but to constantly be aware of where we are, where we're spending our time, and how we're spending our time. And it doesn't matter which analogy that you use. Your car will never run on one gas tank. Your electric car will never run on one charge. Eventually, you have to stop at a gas station and fill it up. You have to plug it in so it can reset. No athlete can ever run forever, and neither can we. But we end up sacrificing ourselves and building long-term damage, but we also get in the way of our clarity and our capacity to be able to execute the things that matter. And in today's day and age, in the world that we're in right now, things change fast. The way that marketing and business was done 3 years ago is so drastically different than the way it's done now. Things that used to work for years don't work anymore, or they'll work for a week and then they're out the window. And so we constantly need to make sure that we have a full bucket and that we're operating with our own clarity. And the most important way to do that is to rest, is to give yourself space. And space is not just designed for you to physically recharge your bucket. It's really designed to turn off the noise of the world, to turn off all the noise that's coming in all the time, that's getting in the way of your thoughts, your heart, and your soul. And for me, that's God time, that's quiet time, right? And one of the most powerful quotes, and I've said this on this podcast hundreds of times, and I'm going to say it probably till the day I die. And one of the biggest breakthroughs that I ever had in my life is when I was looking for clarity in the jungles of Costa Rica. And I had a shaman, Brad, look me dead in the eye and say, George, your biggest problem is you've never been quiet enough to hear God's whispers. And I can say that I've taken that to heart since, and stillness is my most powerful practice. But when I was going into this weekend in Austin, I was overwhelmed, overloaded, so much noise, potential moving studio, business changes, new clients, intensives, and all these wonderful things that I'm grateful for. But my physical body was in a state of angst, not in a state of flow, not in a state of vitality, and it's leaky, and it gets really, really dangerous when those things start to come in. And then I recognized that the 3 to 4 days after this event, where I was off my phone for 3 days because I was forced to intentionally rest and nourish my soul and be in community with men, I had nothing but idea after idea after idea. And let's be honest, no matter where we are in business, what level we're at, the only vision we're executing is ours, which means all the ideas get to be ours, not somebody else's playbook, not somebody else's ideas, that internal barometer that we have inside of ourselves. And so the most important advice that I can ever give you is make sure that you give yourself space and you allow it to be quiet enough to hear God's whispers, or maybe it's the universe's whispers for you. For me, it's God. And the most important part is even when they tickle, and you know I like to reframe the word trigger to tickle because they're good things that are telling me how to improve. But I read this article and I found this post about the 7 types of rest, and it absolutely blew my mind. And it started to help me understand my body differently. It started to help me understand my nervous system differently. And I wanted to share them with you because I think the most important thing you can do is intentionally rest, whether that's having a tight container in your day every day, meaning when 5 p.m. comes, 5 p.m. comes, and the phone goes away and you focus on family time or creative time or physical time or release time, or intentionally scheduling pockets in your day where you allow yourself to just be, right? And one of the questions that I saw one of my incredible clients, friends, dear friends, JP post, and this one will tickle, and this one will tickle if you really sit with it. But if you were to do an audit of the last 30 days of your life, and you were to think about it in units of time, right? Like with every hour being a unit of measure, in the last 30 days of all the hours that you can remember, how many of them did you intentionally do that were aligned with who you want to be in the future? And how many of them were unintentionally done that kept you stuck or stagnant or focused on the past? And these exercises are challenging. I do them. I just spend my weekend in tears working through this on my own. And now I'm radiant and glowing on the other side because there's no finish lines and there's no finish line to the work. But just really sit with that question for a minute and really start to be honest from a place of grace with yourself, because awareness is really the finish line. The more aware we are of where we're spending our time, where we're leaking our time, where we're intentionally using it to create the results we want, and where we're unintentionally using it to prevent us from having those results, the faster adjustments can be made. And I genuinely believe that space is the biggest secret. And I believe that business used to be easier before the internet, because when work was done, and you weren't calling my house phone. You'd have to send me a fax, right? You'd have to send me a letter. Like, business wasn't handled until we got into the office to handle business. And people forget that before the internet, people had multi-million-dollar businesses and they had full lives where they were using their time to focus on the things that mattered. And so what I want to share with you right now are the 7 different types of rest so that you can utilize them to allow your body and mind to rest and reset, and to most importantly, create the space for you to process, for you to filter out the noise in the world and to tune into yourself, to tune into your vision, to tune into your feelings, to your heart, your mind, and your soul, because that's where all the magic happens. Your alignment is the most powerful tool that you have. And so the 7 types of rest that exist, I'm going to list them out and I'm going to explain what each one is. So the first one is called social rest. The second one is called sensory rest. The third one is called mental rest. The fourth one is called emotional rest. The 5th one is creative rest. The 6th one is spiritual rest. And the seventh one is physical rest. And these are not in any order or any order of priority. They are up to you to prioritize. And I will make sure that we include these in the show notes of what they are. And so for you, I'm going to explain what each one of these are. And my invitation for you is that after this show, you don't allow this to become self-help, but you pick one up and you intentionally start to schedule in your rest. You start to schedule in pockets or containers or your day around these rest periods so that you can stay in alignment and you can be the best version of yourself. And one of the analogies that I like to tell myself is that I'm an F1 car, right? Like I'm the fastest race car in the world, but I can't expect to win a race if I put water in the gas tank. Like I need to put rocket fuel in there. The car has to be prepped. The tires have to be warm. That car has to be in peak position in order for me to win the game when I get on the track. But that also means I have to get off the track and pay attention to the vehicle. I have to check what's weak. I have to check what's needed. I have to pay attention to the things that might not be working. And these 7 buckets allow us to figure out what are the most important buckets and where do we need to recharge? Where are we overwhelmed? Where are we in resistance? And then we make adjustments, okay? So the 7 types again are social rest, sensory rest, mental rest, emotional rest, creative rest, spiritual rest, and physical rest. I'm going to explain what each one is, and then for you, it's up to you to figure out which one tickles, or if they all tickle, and make a plan to implement them. And if you want a good book, Keith Cunningham wrote a book called The Road Less Stupid, and it's one of the best business books ever because it's not a straight through read, it's a chapter to chapter read, but he has this concept called thinking time. And he talks about it so thoroughly in the book, and it's so powerful. But when you create these pockets of rest, you allow yourself that space. Sometimes that space is going to purge emotions. For me, in Austin, I had to weep. Everybody thought I lost my voice from yelling, but I actually lost my voice from crying, and there was nothing wrong. I just hadn't allowed myself to feel grief at the deepest level. And I had some tremendous breakthroughs that I have shared in our alliance, just haven't been called to share on here yet, and maybe I will at some point. But really, feeling is our greatest gift. And when we feel, and I found this in a study, the human body only feels an emotion for 90 seconds. The rest of it is the stories we make up. And so a lot of the times we avoid these spaces and sitting still and just being. And it prevents us from feeling or releasing or understanding the diagnosis or the check engine light that's happening on the inside of our body. So let's break these down. What is social rest? Social rest is when you intentionally spend time focusing on relationships that nourish you, maybe weeding out negativity, negative shows that you watch, negative music that you watch, removing negative relationships and negative noise. And so if you're socially resting, like for me, I love spending time with people present. That is social rest for me. It fills my bucket when I spend time with people that I love, that love me, when there's no agenda and we're present with each other. So that's social rest. The second one is sensory rest, which is actually giving your senses a break, right? So these are things like darkness, cleaning your house or cleaning your work area, reducing the blue lights or the EMFs that you're surrounded by, getting away from all the technology, doing a sensory deprivation tank. Like one of my favorite things when I wake up in the morning, Branson's still asleep and it's pitch black. I spend like 30 minutes just laying in bed with my eyes open in the dark, just completely present. I pray in that time, I check in that time, and it really feels like sensory rest right when I start my day. So that's sensory rest. The third one is mental rest, and really giving yourself mental rest. And mental rest is silence, spending time in silence, spending time in stillness, journaling, pausing, right? I know we make it wrong all the time when people come home from work and they park in their driveway and they just sit there in the car. They're intentionally doing mental rest. And it's something that I do. Even this morning when I dropped Branson off at school, I came home and there was nobody home. Lindsay was out, Cheyenne was out. And I just sit in the car. And I don't know why, but I'm really comfortable in my car and just sitting there in silence for a few minutes and just giving my brain a minute to rest and then making a plan. And so that's mental rest. The fourth one is emotional rest. And the way that you do emotional rest is you change your surroundings. You get out of your current situation and put yourself in a different one. You do things that enhance your mood. Maybe you go play, you play games. Maybe you move your body. Maybe you go out for a hike or a walk, right? You do anything that helps reset your emotions, but also changing your current environment. and that's emotional rest. The next one is creative rest. And this is one that I've unlocked by having a 7-year-old son. And this one happens to be one of my favorites. Creative rest is when you draw, coloring, playing games, like singing, just allowing your mind to be off. And one of my favorite ways is every night Branson and I play games. Sometimes we play these Roblox games that seem so mindless, but I don't have to think. I don't have to think at all. And then I end up building boats with him that we can navigate waters and see who can survive the longest. We play these games where we have to color in pictures and things like that, but we're actually using our brain and sharpening it, but we're allowing it to be creative. We're doing things. And I actually read a study of a Harvard professor who, for her undergrad students, her PhD students that have creative blocks, she brings in kindergartners with them, and she has them sit down on the floor with them, won't let them sit at desks, and has them draw with kids, color with kids, and do all the things that the kids want. And it ends up creating massive breakthroughs for them when they allow themselves to be creative. So creative rest is important. The next one is spiritual rest, something that is very much a big, big needle mover for me. And spiritual rest is spending time in prayer, meditation, gratitude, connection. And for me, I heard a pastor say to me, no time is wasted when it's with God. And that landed at a very, very deep level. But really giving your spirit the time to rest and intentionally nourishing it. That's why I live in the mountains of Montana. I love just going outside barefoot. I love being present. Sometimes I do breath work. Sometimes I meditate. Sometimes I pray. But really just allowing your spirit in that spiritual rest. And then the last one is physical rest. And physical rest is the one that tends to get neglected the most as entrepreneurs. But this is actually being still. This is sleeping, doing some breath work, maybe going to get a massage, go get pampered, get a manicure and pedicure. I love getting manicures and pedicures, and I don't go as much as I used to. Acupuncture is one of my favorite things ever. I look forward to them. My sports massage, even my physical therapy, because I just lay on the table and she works on me. But all of those things are physical rest that are helping my physical body perform at its peak. And as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as people, our physical body is the only one we have. And all too often, we ignore it until it's too late. And it's really important and imperative that we take care of it. And so these are the 7 types of rest. Once again, they're social rest, sensory rest, mental rest, emotional rest, creative rest, spiritual rest, and physical rest. And so my invitation for you is to pick any one of these and start intentionally giving yourself the rest that you need. And you'll know after I read that list and let out some examples exactly what it is, because it already tickled, it already landed, and you're like, that's the thing. But now the work is actually doing it and honoring that space. And I joke with people too about the power of stillness, and I will end the show with this story. But if you think about stillness practices, it's something that a lot of people avoid, just sitting still with no agenda, just allowing ourselves to tune into a frequency. And I was like, but almost everybody can resonate with this. And then you think about when you schedule a massage and you're so excited when you schedule it. But then when it's coming up, you think of 800 reasons why you can't go. You have every justification. I'm too busy. Your brain's going. I got work to do. And then you like begrudgingly go and you get on that table and then you're like, all right, well, I can't cancel it. I'm already here. I'm not going to tell the woman I don't want to go. I can't be on my phone. And then you lay on that table and then at some point you start to surrender. And once you surrender, your brain starts going a mile a minute and you're like, holy moly. All right, when I get off the table, I'm going to do this. I'm going to remember this. I'm going to have this. I'm going to do this. And you're like, okay, I can't forget these things. I can't forget these things. And then the next magical moment happens where you end up half asleep, completely like catatonic or completely present and rested. And you forgot everything that you were thinking about because your brain turned off. You get off that table. You feel so refreshed, so magical. And you're like, God, I'm so glad that I did that and stuck that out. And then magically, over the next day or two, every idea that you thought you were going to forget, that you couldn't remember, showed up, and they showed up with more clarity. And that example lands for almost everybody. And that's exactly what happens when we give ourselves the space to rest, when we give ourselves the space to recharge. And with this list that helps you intentionally pay attention to the parts that might be being ignored or might be being neglected. And so my invitation for you is to rest. And if you're going to hustle and grind, make sure that you hustle and grind for who you want to be in the future and not on busy work. Measure your value based on the intentionality and integrity of your inputs, not the results that they create. And if you want a real challenge, give yourself some space and sit down and list out time blocks and units on a piece of paper. And ask yourself in the last 30 days, how many things have I intentionally done for my future version of the person I want to be? And how many things have I unintentionally done that are keeping me where I am, keeping me stuck in the past or in old patterns? And when you have that list, you have every checkpoint needed to be able to get to the next level and keep making progress. And so that's what I had to share today. My little bobblehead says thank you. I appreciate you. I love you to absolute pieces. And just thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being amazing. And thank you for listening to a show where I just basically share all of my own breakthroughs and therapy sessions and hope they're supportive for you. But I genuinely love you and I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. And so have the most beautiful day. God bless. And I will either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out.